Hello YouTube, welcome to part 6 of the Educated Barbarian focused on the Enchiridion. I apologize for the 2 weeks break. I uploaded some videos that were deeply philosophical and it sort of took a lot of energy and mental stamina from me, and I wanted to come back fresh because this is the last episode based on the Enchiridion, meaning that it's only 6 parts long. As I told you, it's really short. It's the reason why I wanted to use it as the introduction to Stoicism. Meaning that next week we're going to start reading Seneca, and we're going to actually focus on the book on the happy life, which is contained in the compilation if you have bought that book. If not, it's again Seneca's On the Happy Life. And I'm starting to debate whether or not we should also read the discourses. I'm going to actually analyze that book. But if I see too many similarities between the discourses and the Enchiridion or the meditations, we might just skip it altogether and go straight to Nietzsche, to Jung, and to the books I'm selecting. I'm not certain yet about the selection of books we're going to actually focus on for the next cycle, but I can tell you that it's going to take some time for us to get through Seneca regardless, so we're going to have some time, and the second I have selected the books, I will share them with you under these videos in a pinned comment so that you can buy the books first, read them first, before I go through with the analysis. So as I said, we're ending our second cycle of Stoicism today. And it's something that I like to do, just like I did with the Agakure. I'm going to wrap it up by making a selection of sorts of the most important principles of Stoicism. But before we get into that, we're going to go back to the paragraphs that I think are the most important and worthy of being analyzed. If any person was intending to put your body in the power of any man whom you fell in with on the way, you would be vexed. But that you put your understanding in the power of any man whom you met, so that if he should revile you, it is disturbed and troubled, are you not ashamed of this? This is good because it likens the submission that would happen if your body was given as an object or item to use by another man, with the action of letting someone else's words or actions dictate the way you feel. And it's important to put them on such a level because no one, absolutely no one, would let someone become master of their body. You wouldn't accept that. And yet we routinely accept the joug, the submission that is imposed on us by others and our perception of who we are. And these are the same faces, they are the two faces of the same coin in reality. It starts with you letting people manipulate you mentally, which eventually leads to them manipulating you physically. So you need to resist that on both fronts and attack it with the same vexation that he describes at the thought of someone taking ownership of your body. Because if someone takes ownership of your brain, then it really is no different. And I would even argue that it is worse when someone can take ownership of your brain and your reasoning capacities than your body. Because what governs it all is here. So in reality, if someone has managed to reach that level, well, they're already masters of your body. And too many people have forgotten that. The physical ownership part is more striking to people because it helps them visualize also that when someone has managed to actually be the owner of your own power, they can do whatever with both the body and the spiritual, the brain. You must do everything according to rule, eat according to strict orders, abstain from delicacies, exercise yourself as you are, at appointed times. In heat, in cold, you must not drink cold water, nor wine as you choose. In a wood, you must deliver yourself up to the exercise master as you do the physician, and then proceed to the contest. And sometimes you will strain the end, put the ankle out of joint, swallow dust, sometimes be flogged, and after all, be defeated. When you have considered all this, if you still choose, go to the contest. If you do not, you will behave like children. So it speaks to lifting, of course, because lifting is really similar to what you just described. You want an end goal. But on the way to the end goal, there is much difficulty. And those who complain about the difficulties, one, never reach their goal, and two, behave like children because they complain about struggle. Grown men, grown women don't complain about the struggle because one, you embrace struggle. It's your choice to actually go forth and take it. And two, it's just part of being human. There is a big subculture nowadays of people who reject struggle. And you hear them complain that it's unfair they have to work, it's unfair they have to wake up in the morning, etc. And you would question yourself, okay, what would be a perfect life according to these people? And the answer is simple. It would be apathy, just nothingness, a life of empty void where there's no action undertook. Don't kid yourself. Those people who tell you that they would find a hobby or they would finally do what they want to do in life, they're lying. They already can't do it now with limited time. It's much easier to pursue a passion with limited time because you have a small schedule and a small window of opportunity to do that. If you just open that window altogether, these people would just stay idle. So do not actually subscribe to that type of mindset. You must do everything according to the rules that are dictated by us and dictated by the universe to us. And in that is the enjoyment of struggle. Everything he describes is that pretty much. It's something that is unavoidable, but that can still be avoided at the cost of your own life. And therefore, it shouldn't be avoided. He gives you a forced choice at the end. He says, if you still choose, go to the contest. Meaning that he's telling you you could, if you want not go, just stay home. But if you do so, you will behave like children. And you don't want to do that. A kid is the epitome of a lack of responsibility, and that's perfectly normal. They lack the shoulders to handle responsibilities, and you slowly give it to them. You make them do chores. You give them a small goldfish that they can learn how to take care of something weaker than them. And eventually they grow into fine adults that can shoulder and burden much more responsibilities. But many people reach a stage of adulthood without ever reaching that stage, and therefore they refuse responsibility. Responsibility is what makes you an adult. Duties are universally measured by relations. Is a man a father? The precept is to take care of him, to yield to him in all things, to submit when he is reproachful, when he inflicts blows. But suppose that he is a bad father. Were you then by nature made akin to a good father? No, but to a father. So there's a lot to unfold here. First, there's filial piety, the idea that you need to respect your parents, something that we're lacking as a society nowadays. And we're lacking in this not necessarily because the kids are less respectful, but because the parents are not parents anymore. It is very tough to be respectful and to yield to a parent who is still a children, in a sense. And maybe some of you guys have experiences with that, where you know deep down that you are supposed to be respectful and to look up to that person, but you just can't because they lack the necessary qualities that would allow you to do that in your right mind. It could also potentially put you at risk if the parent is abusive. And this is why there is a measure of balance added by Epictetus. He says, but what if they're a bad parent? And in that sense, what he says is that you are not put in a position in that sense where you are asked to pick, because the choice was never yours in the first place. Since they're bad parents, the choice and the questioning is void. You are asked to yield to parents, but by being a bad parent, that person is not a parent anymore, so you're not supposed to yield. This is what I understand from this paragraph. He makes a distinction between fathers, which we could just call biological drivers, and dads. There's a difference. A dad educates you, he's nurturing, he's tough when he needs to be. A father just gave his sperm, and that's it. He stops at that role. He did the biological, not the cultural. And a man could do the cultural for you if you have a stepfather. He didn't do the biological, but he actually did the most important part. He raised you. So if that's the case, you have the right and the duty, in my opinion, to relinquish these people and to not submit to them anymore. Hoping that you yourself will be put in a position one day where you can be a parent to a kid who is going to yield to you because they recognize that this is for the best. As to pity towards the gods, you must know that this is the chief thing, to have right opinions about them, to think that they exist, and that they administer the all well and justly. And you must fix yourself in this principle, to obey them, and to yield to them in everything which happens, and voluntarily to follow it as being accomplished by the wisest intelligence. For if you do so, you will never either blame the gods, nor will you accuse them of neglecting you. Okay, so you read the first few lines and you think, okay, this is just zealotry, and I'm being told to just completely submit to an invisible being. How is that Stoicism? Well, it's very simple. You see, I firmly believe that between Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, one has a more poetic view of nature, gods, and the source, Marcus Aurelius, and one has a much more utilitarist approach of the concept of divinity, and that is Epictetus. He basically uses the concept of a higher being to make sure that you go through your life without complaining, and by understanding that what is given to you by fate is yours to play with. Because what he says is this: in terms of respecting the gods, what do you have to do? You have to believe that they exist. You have to believe that they're in their right mind and that their opinions are correct. That all they do, meaning all that happens to you, is justified. That you must apply yourself to match what is done to you. That you must obey the very principle that what they do is in your best interest, and to just yield to them in everything which happens. Okay. To also follow them and also to follow what they do as being accomplished by the wisest intelligence. All of these rules, all of them, add up to you being a more powerful human and a more free human. That's the most important thing. None of these principles are restricting. You're never asked to actually submit to a divinity. You're asked to access your own divinity, because by his definition and list he gives, he puts you in a position where whatever happens to you, you're still the master of it, because you're telling yourself that it was done for a reason and that it can only be for a good reason, for a good chance that is going to arise to you. That puts you in a position where you are completely detached from any excuse, from any wrongful justification, and from any behavior that would potentially put you in a situation of someone who has relinquished the idea that they can control their fate, which is paradoxical because he describes fate, but it's not what he's doing actually. He's putting you at the helm. He's telling you that with those rules, whatever happens to you is up to you to decide how you're going to handle that. He's not saying that fate has decided that for you. He's saying that whatever ends up happening was dictated by fate. And these are different things altogether. And since this is his actual true objective, he also concludes by saying that you will never either blame the gods or accuse them of neglecting you, because that's the problem with believing in a god in the first place. It can be easy to blame God and say, okay, if everything that happens to me is up to you, then why are you doing this to me? Well, it's because God is not doing that to you. The universe is throwing things your way and you messed up. It's not God's fault that you didn't manage to actually succeed in that endeavor. And you don't blame the gods, because when you blame the gods, you are blaming the source, you're blaming chaos, you're blaming the universe that doesn't really care about you and just selects those who are going to make it based on a simple challenge of throwing as much struggle your way as possible and just looking at who makes it through the filter. The universe doesn't care if you make it or not. It's going to continuously do that and grind people to a pulp. And if you survive, great. And if you don't, it doesn't care. Having determined in your mind that everything which shall turn out is indifferent and does not concern you, and whatever it may be, for it will be in your power to use it well, and no man will hinder this. Come then with confidence to the gods as your advisors. So it's a paragraph that I actually took from a segment that I thought to be just uninteresting until I realized, of course, it was a metaphor. When you read that book, it's short, so don't skip paragraphs. Sometimes you'll read things and you'll think, this is nonsense, I don't know why you're telling me that. It's because there is a hidden message within it. And usually it's like 2 lines that are going to denote, and those 2 lines tell the story of the entire paragraph. So what he's saying here is, in the same vein, everything that happens will turn out to be indifferent, meaning that the event that happened to you are not tainted by positive or negative connotations. You do that. You broke your leg, that's not negative or positive. You say it's negative because it hurts, you're not going to be able to walk or to lift. But nature in itself has not intended for it to be negative. And culturally, throughout different countries and ethnicities, we interpret certain events differently, which shows that there is no true objective natures to them. They're all subjective, based on your opinion. So once you accept that everything is just neutral, and is not just targeted at you or for you, you understand that whatever it may be, it is in your power to use it well, because it's neutral. So it's just, again, your choice to make. And since you manage to do that, you understand also that it's within you. So no man outside of your cognizance has the ability to touch that power. It is a superpower in a sense. It's tough to reach because it means that you're cutting yourself off from all of the paths of excuses, but it is really worth it. And that's when you come with confidence to the gods as your advisors. The entire story was based on actually going to have your fortune told, and I was thinking, well, that's nonsense. Then I read that and I realized, oh, it's because if you actually apply these and espouse these principles, you show up to the fortune teller, whatever it tells you doesn't really matter, because all of it will be actually positive. This is the twist of that paragraph. And now, as I promised, we are going to read the principles that are contained under paragraph 33, which is my favorite number, and that I condensed together. These, I believe, are the true markings of a Stoic mind. If you read that paragraph, you will see that it also contains a lot of things that are different from what I'm going to say. I want you to read it all, because a lot of the things that Epictetus shares in that paragraph I disagree with, but this is why it makes it so important. I'm not going to cite the things I disagree with, but I want you to know that I just picked. This is my selection. You might have a different selection as you read through, because we have different objectives and different opinions about what is most important for a man in his life. Immediately prescribe some character and some form to yourself, which you shall observe both when you are alone and when you meet with men. So first, it's a bidimensional personality trait or persona that is applied not just in private or in public, but in both. And I think that's truly important. I do think that separations between your true self and the self you show to the world should exist to a degree. If it's too marked, there's a chance you're going to start losing touch with your personality and who you are inside. And beyond that, telling yourself you want to be a certain way is more important than you think. A lot of people fail to do that, and they never manage to become who they want to be. It's because they don't dictate rules to the way they behave. If you want to be, I don't know, charismatic and outgoing, okay, these are traits that you are not born with. No one is born with these traits. The people who develop them do so through efforts. Character development is a question of effort, and before the effort comes the decision. You have to tell yourself, I'm going to prescribe the character traits of charisma and outgoingness and friendliness to myself. And I'm going to apply them both when I'm alone, so I'm going to imagine myself as these things, and when I'm with men. Let silence be the general rule, or let only what is necessary be said, and in few words, very important too. I have found that in social situations, the people that you listen to the most are the ones who make the less noise, and that might be paradoxical, but if you are a person of a few words, these words matter now. They have weight. If you say 5 words to another person's 50, I guarantee you people are going to listen intently to these 5 words. And you also are going to be more dignified in a sense. A more pleasant person to be around, because in truth, people who speak a lot also impose an emotional baggage on others, because you have to constantly transcribe and understand what is being said. And if that is just like an endless stream of words that could just be summed up by another set of words that is shorter, it's always better to be succinct. Avoid banquets which are given by strangers and by ignorant persons. For you must know that if your companions be impure, he also who keeps company with him must become impure, though he should happen to be pure. So first off, ignore stupid people. I think that this is one of the best advice you can get from this book. I have found one thing. I am someone who's trying to help people, and I cannot stand intellectual dishonesty. But I have realized one thing. It's no point trying to fix stupid people because they're too stupid to be fixed, or ignoring people altogether. You need to leave them alone. If they manage to actually elevate themselves, then great. If not, just let them be. You're just lowering yourself to their level when you speak to them. And in terms of why you should do that, why you should avoid banquets and in reality just social interactions with the people that fall into that category, it's because they're going to taint you. You could be pure, you could be intelligent and valuable, but you could be dragged down by these people. En français, on dit Oh, I forgot. C'est mieux d'être tout seul que mal accompagné, meaning that it's better to be alone than in bad company, because your character can suffer from the poor influence on others. And I firmly believe that, especially for children. As to pleasure with women, abstain as far as you can before marriage. But if you do indulge in it, do it in the way which is conformable to custom. Do not, however, be disagreeable to those who indulge in these pleasures, or reprove them, and do not often boast that you do not indulge in them yourself. Okay, interesting point here. So first, he pretty much tells you that once you're married, it's open bar, you can do whatever you want, which is a message that I deeply agree with. I find that casual hookups damage you as a person, but that the same type of intercourse within the bound of marriage does the exact opposite. It reinforces you, because it reinforces something that is solid, which is your relationship with the person. And you will find that out too. I think that it takes being in love and it takes having a solid relationship for you to understand the true meaning of sex. Because I think there's 3 levels to human sexuality. There's masturbation, there is casual sex with no emotional bound, and there is sex with emotional bound. The third one being the most pure and the most actually positive version of these 3 iterations. So it's something that you want to actually strive towards. And if you're not married, you should reduce it as much as possible, which I also agree. For both men and women, it's not just women. And you should do it in a way which is comfortable to, I keep saying comfortable, conformable to custom, meaning that you should regard anything that comes out of the norm and is very prevalent in our society, sadly, as dangerous and toxic, because it most likely is. But do not be disagreeable to those who indulge. It's not your problem. Yes, they're mistaken and in the wrong path, but don't be preachy about it, because then it looks like, and it might become a truth, that you're only doing this to look better. And he's also saying to not actually let people know how little you indulge. Just like you don't want someone to just boast about them having sex all the time, don't be the guy who is a prude and who says that you're just preserving yourself or whatever, because it shows that you're not doing it for yourself. Once you understand the value of what I preached, you will not feel the need to actually showboat to people. You'll do it for yourself, and you'll just think of your poor companions that haven't understood that truth yet. If a man has reported to you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make any defense to what has been told to you, but reply, "The man did not know the rest of my thoughts, for he would not have mentioned these only." Might be my favorite quote from Epictetus, because it is true. Regardless of what people reproach you, these can be faulty reproaches and even lies. But you know that deep down, if they actually could really know who you are and see all of your flaws and truths and secrets, they would find things that justify their hatred. And therefore, don't be upset by it. It is their mistake, they are mistaken, but at the end of the day, their spirits and feelings are their own, and you cannot let that touch you. If you have received the impression of any pleasure, guard yourself against being carried away by it, but let the thing wait for you and allow yourself a certain delay on your own part. Then think of both times, of the time when you will enjoy the pleasure and of the time after the enjoyment of the pleasure, when you will repent and will reproach yourself. Excellent. The problem with pleasure is that It is an immediate gratification that exists in the present and therefore is always closer to you than the future. What I mean by this is that this is you, this is pleasure, this is gratification, this is the future, this is the repercussion. You are always closer to the gratification, and therefore it weighs heavier on your head and mind and body than the actual repercussion of the act. If you focus on the repercussion, the power of the pleasure diminishes because you are already envisioning what it's going to be like once you have given up to pleasure, and that can be done for anything. For your junk food cravings, instead of thinking about how good it'll feel as you eat, focus on how shitty you will feel afterwards, and that is going to be a remedy for your addiction. And the same can be applied for pretty much anything. This is an excellent advice. I also like the idea that before you submit to pleasure, if you choose to, you should wait a bit. And the reason why you wait is because you're pushing away the addiction. Addicts cannot wait. You plop a piece of chocolate in front of a junk food addict, he's going to just stuff it down. If you actually manage to wait 15 minutes, just look at it and think, okay, I'm the master of this, you're not an addict anymore. And that can be a very good training to put yourself through. When any person treats you ill or speaks ill of you, remember that he does this or says this because he thinks that it is his duty. It is not possible then for him to follow that which his opinion, it is not possible then for him to follow that which seems right to you, but that which seems right to himself. Accordingly, if he is wrong in his opinion, he is the person who is hurt, for he is the person who has been deceived. Too many people see someone who doesn't like them and they think to themselves, okay, factually this makes no sense. I can prove to you that I'm likable. But you're mistaken because the statement that is being produced by that individual is not factual, it's emotional. You dislike people based on emotions. A lot of people like to tell themselves it's because of facts. Facts will reinforce the preconceived emotion that was already there in your heart. Rarely is it created by that. We tend to have emotions first and facts second. And therefore, understand that when someone mistreats you, he is right in his own head to do so because all of it computes. It doesn't compute in your head, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't compute in his. And at this point, you can only let go because if he is correct, then he is correct, so be it, he doesn't like you. If he is wrong, however, the only person hurt is them, not you. Because they are closing the door and are shutting away a person that could have been an asset in their life. For you, it's not a loss. It's nothing, it's not even dust. Does a man bathe quickly? Do not say that he bathes badly, but that he bathes quickly. Does a man drink much wine? Do not say that he does this badly, but say that he drinks much. For before you shall have determined the opinion, how do you know whether he is acting wrong? Here, Epictetus is telling you, okay, we just described what happens when someone dislikes you on faulty pretenses. You don't want to be the person who dislikes people on these pretenses. So, apply an objective standpoint to the way you judge people. And that starts with language. Don't focus on people's flaws. It's something that I've realized with age. People have flaws. Everyone is flawed to an extent. And people will reveal their flaws to you. You do not have to look for them. Because if you look for them, you're going to find things that weren't there in the first place. And you're just, again, shutting the door on people who could have been actually good contacts in terms of friendship or business partnerships, etc. On no occasion, call yourself a philosopher, and do not speak much among the uninstructed about theorems of philosophy or precepts. Key, for one simple reason, you don't call yourself a Stoic to look cool. You do it because it improves your life, and this is a mindset that is really rare and needs to be shared more amongst people who care about philosophy, because some of the most unsufferable, some of the most obscure and occluse minds I've ever met in my life were people who are deeply into philosophy, because they got into it for the wrong reasons. They got into it to impress people and flex, quote unquote, their intellect. This is not the way. you go into it to be a better person and be a valuable asset to humanity. And any other reason is faulty in and of itself. And therefore, you should never call yourself a philosopher. You should never call yourself any type of philosophy practitioner. Don't call yourself a Stoic. Don't call yourself a follower of Nietzsche. Don't call yourself a Cartesian practitioner. Just call yourself you and apply what makes the most sense in your life. When at a small cost you are supplied with everything for the body, do not be proud of this, nor if you drink water, say on every occasion, I drink water. But consider first how much more frugal the poor are than we, and how much more enduring for labor. And if you ever wish to exercise yourself in labor and endurance, do it for yourself and not for others. Summing up what I just said, do not share with others what you perceive to be the fruits of your intellect or the fruits of your practice. It will be seen by your action, by the way you live. You don't have to make big announcements because it might very well be the reason why you lack results. You're constantly doing it for others. You do everything in this life for yourself first. Even what you perceive to be selfless acts are for yourself first, and that is normal. We are human. But it's embracing that mindset that allows you to be a positive influence. And here I'm going to actually end, because this is the last paragraph of the Enchiridion, with the exact opposite. I just described to you how a philosopher, who shouldn't call himself a philosopher, should act. Now let's talk about someone who is the exact opposite. The condition and characteristic of an uninstructed person is this: he never expects from himself profit nor harm, but from externals. Meaning that he has refused to believe that good or evil can come from him. Everything comes from outside. So if a benefit is enlightening his life, it's because of something else. If he felt it's something else, very dangerous. The Exnorwood has almost no grasp on your life, almost none. The condition and characteristic of a philosopher is this: he expects all advantage and all harm from himself. The signs of one who is making progress are these: he censures no man, he praises no man, he blames no man, he accuses no man, he says nothing about himself as if he were somebody or knew something. When he is impeded at all or hindered, he blames himself. If a man praises him, he ridicules the praiser to himself. If a man censures him, he makes no defense. He goes about like weak persons, being careful not to move any of the things which are placed before they are firmly fixed. He removes all desire from himself, and he transfers aversion to those things only of the things within our power, which are contrary to nature. He employs a moderate movement towards everything. Whether he is considered foolish or ignorant, he cares not. And in a word, he watches himself as if he were an enemy and lying in ambush. Read that paragraph. I beg you to read that paragraph several times. A lot of the meaning at first will escape your grasp. Read it again and again, especially the last part. He watches himself as if he were an enemy and lying in ambush. This is, I think, an excellent introduction to shadow work and the young literature that we're going to be studying in the next year together. I'm not going to expand on it too much here, but in this paragraph, I think, lays the essence of what I can only describe as the pseudo-perfect human. A lot of these things I disagree with, but I think I disagree with them because I don't fully grasp them. And I think that with time, as I study more and more, I'm going to be closer and closer to them. And I'm going to leave you with that. You want to be the philosopher in this case. You don't want to be the uninstructed person. But keep in mind that all of these things that were described go against that one principle of expecting from himself profit nor harm, and always thinking that it comes from the externals. All of it comes from within. You have the power to actually employ yourself and progress, but the mindset and the mind that progresses is the one that follows these principles and not the other way around. And that is going to be this for the Enchiridion. Starting next week, you are going to study the Happy Life by Seneca. So I suggest you start reading it. I don't know how long it's going to be. We're going to take the time that it takes, because after this last read, we will close the door on Stoicism for good. So it's our last rodeo with the writings of the ancients. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.